He brings more than 25 years of experience serving children and adults with developmental and neurobehavioral disabilities, brain injury, and co-occurring psychiatric disorders in a variety of settings: outpatient, consultation, community residences, private schools, and hospitals. He completed his internship and postdoctoral fellowship at Mass General Hospital and Harvard Medical School. There's more about him in the Sketch app. You can take a look at his full bio, but I will turn it over to Dr. Ricciardi.
Thank you. Thank you. This is my first time at this conference, and it's just a beautiful thing. I hate that I've missed it for so long, you know? And all the families and kids that have been coming by and grabbing our little crayons and just chatting, it's just been a wonderful experience, and I'm really honored to be a part of it now. And I'll be back in a couple of years. So yeah, I've been asked to present on what can we do for challenging behavior that happens in really children with brain problems or children with epilepsy in particular. And I have 35 minutes to do it, so I don't know what I'm going to do. But I'm going to do my best to just outline, generally, how do we understand these problems? I know you have to take this back home, you have to go to your schools, and you have to talk about these things. So these are some ideas for maybe what you should look for. And then what are the interventions that we use? I'll give you some case exemplars and show you how we lay it out. Now, I work with very severe cases. These are children who come in to live in our residential school. So these are a level of intensity, but the principles are going to be the same. And maybe you could walk away saying, well, if they could work with something like that, then maybe my home problem could take some of these principles as well. And then also, a philosophy of care and intervention. And I think that's what you want to look for, a philosophy of care and intervention. I'm going to start with that. Also, question and answer after, as long as you'd like. We can go out into the hallway. And then my email is going to appear on a number of slides. Feel free to reach out to me that way, too. If you have any questions, I can send you copies of the presentation. But this philosophy absolutely has to begin with, you're not the cause of the problem. Okay? When your child has behavior problems, no blame. No blame. They're frustrating. And people from the outside, they're gonna blame, I discipline my child, that's what you need. That's not what's going on here. Absolutely not. Your child isn't to be blamed. It's not a character problem. Your child's doing the best that they absolutely can. They're doing the best they can. There's no blame. And the school might not know what's going on, and they may be prone to blame, I don't know, but the school might not be knowing what's going on, and they're trying. And that's the way we enter into consultation with schools and talking with families. These are complex problems. There's multiple forces acting together to create the appearance of behavior problems in children post-epilepsy surgery, before the surgeries, with recurrent seizures, and with all sorts of brain injuries. It's neurology. Neurology and learning processes have been affected, and it's a developing child. It means it's a moving target. That's what's going on. There's a moving target we're trying to intervene on. Things worked when the child was 7, and now they're 9, and what's going on? And things have been great. Now they're 14, and it's going haywire. It's a moving target. And that's why you have to step back and go, who's going to take the blame for that? There is no blame to be had. So what are these neurobehavioral disorders? It's our special term for prolonged behavior problems following an injury to the brain or disruption in brain development and brain architecture. These are all things that happen in kids with epilepsy. The challenging behaviors, right, that interfere with the student's learning and socialization, they can become a chronic problem too, right? These are going to be emotional and behavioral outbursts, refusal to engage in things that kids ought to be doing, like going to school, getting out of bed on time, doing home routines, or even on the severe form, aggression and property destruction that can harm themselves and others. Now, in children with brain injuries, about 50% of them are going to develop these problems following an injury. In children with epilepsy, some of these start before the problem is recognized or start before seizures. And this is our indication that there's something organic going on. And a lot of childhood organic neurological problems begin with the appearance of behavior change. So children aren't doing well, and for a while it's a matter of changing our parenting style or discipline, and then it's realized to be something far more concerning and something more organically driven. And then after the surgery, some of the children are still going to have the behavior problems. A lot of that's related to whether there's strong enough and pervasive enough seizure control. Nonetheless, even with that, there can be behavioral problems that persist after this. And when they happen and they persist, it can cause problems with family relationships, social relationships. I have kids in my school who realize they're different from others, and why can't I make friends like others? So then they have the social emotional problem of how do I go on, feeling different from others? That's one of the beauty here, by the way. It was so heartwarming to see kids with all these friendships, and they're walking around, they're taking our little squishy balls and they're chucking them at each other. And I'm going, boy, they're having a good time. And then somebody gets a text message, and then they're running off to meet somewhere else. What a beautiful thing. It's also going to interfere, obviously, with potentially school placements and then a home living arrangement. So these are problems that somebody has to work on right away. This is the moving target problem. So the epilepsy happens in a brain that's in development. All these lines of development are just showing us that really from conception, right in mom's belly onward, and then all the way to birth, the brain is developing all the way up until they're 26 years old. There's lines of development going on. And this is why, depending on the timing of the onset of the disease, you're going to have different cognitive effects later on in life. The factors that are going to influence these are going to be, like I said, the age of the onset of the problem, some specific seizure syndromes, lesions that were in effect before the seizure that gave rise to seizures, seizure recurrence, EEG abnormalities in between seizures, and then some anti-seizure medicines. So it's a complex problem, and it leads to these cognitive problems. And the driver of behavior problems is going to be the cognitive problems, okay? This is what these are the 5 big categories. You've seen this probably on school psychological testing. This is like the Wechsler test. Everybody gets one of those. And these are the big domains. But think about what they're supposed to do functionally. So when there's problems with the verbal index, it means I'm not able to really understand, use, and think spoken language, communicate concerns, and get my needs met. And we know there's strong research suggesting that behavior problems can serve a communicative function. They sort of tell the world, I want that, or I don't want this, or this is bugging me. And if I have a communication delay, then behavior becomes, for a little child, a solution. Tantrums, meltdowns in an older child are a habit that's been learned, and it was acquired because this became functional for me. It helped to solve some problems in absence of the verbal skills that I ought to have. And then you combine this with some of the other major cognitive areas. Visuospatial is, I'm going to be processing shapes and spaces, see how things fit together, and this gives me the ability to problem solve in complex situations. My processing speed accurately and quickly process information, solve problems, achieve outcomes. Any disruptions in these areas are a frustration for a child. They're not going to be able to do as well as school, compete socially, get the things that they want. And because of this, behavior can emerge as my solution. So the behavior has a function for the child. It's a compensation. It's their way of getting their needs met. And then, of course, the big one, you combine these and you get into executive function. And this is why so many of these problems in kids who've otherwise been doing okay start to emerge when they're around 13, 14 years old. They head into school. And what happens is the demands of the school, the social demands and the academic demands, suddenly jump off of a cliff, right? It suddenly gets very hard from 8th grade to 9th grade, and I can't compete easily. It's hurtful, it's frustrating, it's difficult. Behavior problems can sometimes solve these problems for the kid. And then, of course, social emotional learning, the things like when I'm a little bit older than a 13-year-old, I'm supposed to be able to self-manage, I'm supposed to have self-awareness. And if these things aren't existent, then problem behaviors can emerge. My son was 3 years old, less than 3, and I said no to him or something, and he slapped me. And it wasn't too hard, but I said, Michael, that hurt me. And then he burst into tears, Daddy, I'm sorry, and he wanted to hug me and all. His social emotional learning was way down here. His impulse control was way down here, and I frustrated him. But his social emotional learning was just enough that if I gave him that little prompt, that hurt me. I don't want to do that again. I'm sorry, Daddy. And someday his development would be enough that it itself would inhibit. But if he had any interruption in the development of that, some interruption in the brain, then that behavior to hit me in frustration or to get something that he wanted might become a habit over time as his way of solving his problems, you know? So if the brain's development is interrupted, then the things that we expect out of children to solve their problems and get their needs met are just not going to happen. So this is a quick summary of our neurobehavioral formulation. This is the first thing that you want to look for. I mentioned clinical philosophy, but when you're working with a behavior specialist or a school system or somebody's going to tell you, you want to see that they understand that this is a brain problem that's driving this. It's a brain that then its development is impacted in some of these cognitive areas, and that has to be the first starting point. We do this with our staff at the Brain Injury School because it immediately softens things, right? People's frustrations go, oh, okay, so he can't help it. It's not to take away responsibility or something. It's to say, well, there's a strong organic driver of this, or so he's not doing it on purpose. No, he's trying to solve problems, and we have to teach him another way to solve his problems. But it softens people when we do this. And sometimes public schools that aren't used to working with children with these types of problems, they don't have that sort of cognitive understanding of it. They don't formulate the case that way, and it goes down the path of a little bit too hard on the child. So this is the beginning of it, that brain development has been affected, as we said. It affects the development of communication, emotional self-regulation, social cognition, and executive function. And these are the critical skills. Think about how you've raised your kids. You've used these words to raise them. You've said, communicate needs and wants effectively. You said, use your words, right? We'll say that to the kids as a way. That's the way we quite naturally teach them to use language to solve their problems, not misbehavior. Hey, stay on track, get things done. Do these things now, and you can do the things you like. We're talking about executive function, manage strong emotions. Hey, everybody calm down, take a breather. Sit over there and calm down. And then, hey, how would other people feel if you did that? How would she like it if that happened to you? We say that when we teach them social cognition, and that's usually enough. But when you have a child whose brain development has been interrupted or delayed, then what's going to happen is they need specialized lessons in those things, getting things done, using their words. They're not going to get it incidentally like we raise our kids. They're going to need special lessons. So when you work with a behaviorist, you want to know, first of all, they're going to be understanding this as a brain problem. They're going to be understanding it as a problem, learning some essential tasks of childhood. And whatever they do in their IEP, they ought to be focused on, how's he going to learn to use words to solve problems? How's he going to learn to understand the feelings that others have? That's got to be part of their learning, and it has to be done directly. Then the next layer in this is, as the child lacks some of these normal developments, they're just a little bit behind. They're developing them, but they're a little bit behind. The demands of the school or the demands of the home environment just can suddenly take a step forward. We're expecting them to be able to handle this like a 10-year-old, but their emotional social development or communication development is around a 7-year-old, and suddenly things get harder. This can happen when classrooms change. It can happen when the home environment has changed all of a sudden. So developmental delays combined with changes in the environment leads to frustration, distress, bad learning, and bad habits. No one's being blamed here, right? We're just simply describing processes. And this is what behaviorists do when they use the circumstances view of problem behavior. And it says that challenging behavior has been learned over time, and we call the process adventitious reinforcement. And that's important too, because when someone says, you're giving too much attention to your child, or you're giving in too much, that's not what happened. There's no way that any parent who has a child with these problems said, I think I'm going to give in for a while and cause meltdowns to occur. There's no way. What happened is, it's 3 a.m. and you say, well, you have to do extinction. You can't give in. They're like, it's 3 a.m. I've got other kids, And then slowly over time, things happen. I had that happen with little Michael too. We were out for dinner. It was Easter dinner, and I had this brilliant idea that at 3 years old, he could sit through 7 courses while we were in this restaurant. And the soup arrived, and it was all good, and he began to scream. And my wife, of course, she always says, well, you're the psychologist, so, help us out here. So, you don't want to give in because he's screaming because he wants to get out of there. But you've got all these eyes peering in on you. So you're like, trust me, we're going to do extinction here. We're just going to wait him out? No. You have to pick him up and carry him away. And he learns, when I'm frustrated and I don't like to be in the restaurant, I can just scream. So we can't go to restaurants for a while. Is that about right? That's how you solve the problem. You prevent. But in getting up and doing that again and again, I've adventitiously, by circumstance and accident, created a reinforcement for the problem. No one's to blame here. Circumstances conspired. The fault is not on character weakness, right? Not the child's fault. It's not the family's fault. It's not the caregiver's fault. It's a series of unfortunate circumstances that have combined, and that's how we create problem behaviors over time. This is not my idea. It's Dr. Pat Fryman. It's been published in one of our lead journals in behavioral intervention, and won a couple of years ago the paper of the year as the field sort of celebrating this is our most important clinical philosophy. He got the idea from Father Flanagan, who started boys' school, and he said, hey, these kids who are living on the streets and causing all the trouble, they're not bad kids, there's no bad boys, they've had bad environments, bad modeling, bad teaching, and we gotta unravel all of that. Good teaching, good modeling, a good and wholesome environment. So we move from a search to blame to a search for solutions. We improve behavior by improving the environment, teaching positive behaviors, and we call this hard on the problem but easy on the child. That's the clinical philosophy. And here are the components when you do this. 3 things to manage children who have problem behavior. And it's a slow process, and it takes time, but it begins with prevention. So we want to set the environment so that behaviors are less likely to be stimulated. If I want Michael to learn to tolerate a long restaurant meal, we're going to have to start with short ones. We're going to have to bring adaptations to the environment, coloring books, goldfish crackers, all those things, and then he's going to be able to sit there. But we're going to bring him to restaurants and help him do well. If we're going to, so we remove the things that trigger the problem if we can, and we add things that make positive behavior more likely to occur. We teach new skills for handling difficult moments and challenges, and then we provide lots and lots of rewards for the things we want to see. Think of when you've taught your child to walk. Each step gets a praise. We don't wait till they can walk across the room till you show any appreciation. Each step gets a praise, each fall gets your support, and then we step and try again. And this is the same thing when we teach and reinforce behaviors. They make mistakes, they misbehave, but that's an error. And then they show the positive behaviors and they get, oh, this is great, and they make mistakes. We stop, we wait, we give a gentle correction, we get back on track. Good job, there you go. It's like teaching to walk. We don't expect it to be the end product. We do little steps along the way. So those are our 3 components when we do a behavior intervention. Here is a list of interventions that are used. The 3 studies from the first down are systematic reviews, meta-analyses, combining multiple studies, suggesting that these are some of the key components. And the bottom one is specific to children with epilepsy. The fact is that the epilepsy research on behavioral intervention is tiny, tiny, tiny. Not very well developed, and then for brain injury is a lot bigger. So some of the principles used in brain injury will apply to the population, and that's what I'm basing this on. So the first thing here are all plain speak, having things done in a structure, predictable daily routine, giving the kids lots of choice. I was having a discussion with parents, and they were saying to me, Dad was saying to me that the point plan and things like that, but sometimes he doesn't want to work points, and we get that sometimes you don't want to do chores and get points, and sometimes you do, and we kind of do that. But at school, they're saying, oh, if you don't earn your points, then you're not going to go to the playground. And you're like, wait, that's not the purpose of the plan. So the idea of sometimes I can do this and sometimes I need a break, that's choice and control over my activities. And I could go through that list, but that's just generally a list of prevention strategies. And then we have the teaching strategies too. And again, this is what the research converges on as valuable for people, kids with brain injuries, what helps them do well. So let me give you an example. So this is Big Dog. Any of the cases that we have, I always get the person, in this case a 21-year-old or a child's assent. I want to use your story, all your successes that you've made, but I need your permission. Is it okay? And I said, I will disguise it so no one will know you, and then we'll come up with a cool name for you. And so, okay. So they like it, the parents like it, and I said, okay, let's say his name was, Theodore. And so I said, Theodore, we have to come up with a cool name for Teddy. I said, I know Teddy, yeah. Okay, but we have to come up with a cool name. Ted, I know Ted, but Theodore, Ted, we need something different. So this was his brain injury sort of being very, very cognitively concrete. And I said, no, we need like a fake name that's cool anyway. Big Dog. So this is Big Dog, 21 years old. He suffered a traumatic brain injury when he was 18. And these are the areas that would have been affected, the lower part and then the middle part. Some of those areas are involved with seizures, as you know. But it affected his inhibition of impulses, and he was very aggressive. Now, prior to this, he was an Eagle Scout. So this wasn't him before the brain injury. He was a model citizen. He did a lot of community volunteering. And then he had the injury and his behavior changed in a dramatic way. He had two areas. He could be aggressive all day long, but we focus specifically on showering and toileting because these are coming up every day. He needed support for these things, couldn't do them on his own, but in the support, he would fight with people. He could be easily stimulated to aggression, and the aggression could hurt people, and he could get hurt because you're falling and slipping, and the shower curtain's coming down. So it was very, very, very difficult for us. So what should he be doing when he's showering? Come on, it's an easy question. What should he be doing? What's that? Showering, yes. Now, one answer is not being aggressive. No, that's not what we don't want to think. We want to think of what positive. He should be showering, and he should be following showering, which is a hard thing. It has to happen in order. You can't dry yourself off when the water's running, okay? That's a problem, you know? You can't rinse and do everything, but you never put on the shampoo. We take that for granted, but order and sequence requires my frontal lobe to be working perfectly. And if you injure the frontal lobe, or if it's been delayed in its development, that part of doing things in the right order will be interrupted. So he needs to learn to do things in this order. And that was the problem when I would observe this occurring. Some staff could bathe him very well. Some staff, there was a lot of aggression. When the staff bathed him very well, they tended to tell him what to do in a series of steps. When the staff who had trouble with him, they said, come on, take a shower, and then they corrected him for his errors. Corrections evoked aggression. Leave me alone. I'm 21. Don't tell me what to do. So this is one of those moments where it sounds like we could all be behavioral psychologists, but let me just tell you, you have to do a lot of observation to pick out these things, and you have to compare it, and you have to do some little experiments. It's like my plumber who charges me $280, and I go, well, you put in that little thing that costs $28 at Home Depot, and they go, yeah, but I put it in, and I knew the little thing to buy to put it in. So this is one of those moments where it sounds awfully easy, and it can be easy if you can analyze that what we're looking at is executive dysfunction. I can't do things in order, and when I'm given feedback about it or correction, then I'm going to make errors and I'm going to become aggressive. So this was the plan. It was a visual that was placed in front of him. It was verbally rehearsed with him, and every step was directed by the staff person, and then every 2 steps was a skittle. So 2 steps, a skittle, 2 steps, a skittle, 2 steps, a skittle. Corrections were handled very simply. Oh, wait, we can't put the shampoo in because first you have to turn on the water. Oh, there we go. And then I'll hold the shampoo. How many squirts? 3. Why do you think we're holding the shampoo? Because we go, this is fun, right? And we have to test the water, but he wants to turn it on. So we go back and forth like that. We have controlled the environment. We hold the shampoo because that's such a temptation for an impulsive person. So we hold that part, we control the environment, he puts in his hair, and we gave him a verbal cue, top to bottom, so he'd start working on his hair, and he'd start, oh, wait, top to bottom, so gentle corrections to do things in order and sequence. That was the solution for Big Dog, and the solution is because it was based on what should he be doing, what is the neuropsychological basis for the problem, executive dysfunction, frontal lobe injury, can't do things in order and sequence, and doing things out of order create a condition for aggression. So this is an example of using these elements of the multi-component plan, the ones that come from research, a structured routine. The demands, the task demands are a little easier because we're helping him. There's a vocal cue that's going on, and he gets rewards for doing these things. But it's just an example of applying these principles. And one of my worries is, of course, you go, yeah, but my kid's problem isn't showering, you know. But what I want you to get out of that is the principles of applying structure, routine, rewards, identifying a positive alternative, and then teaching that very directly. So here's another example, Ariel. So his brain injury is very complicated, and the behavior problems could include aggression. And in this case, we're working on his compliance with transition to school. So he lived in our residence, and it would take him a long time to get from across the parking lot into the school, which is maybe like a 10-minute walk and maybe 20 minutes with a dawdler, and then maybe 30 minutes with a social butterfly. but it would take him an hour to get across the parking lot. And what he would do is he'd engage in stall tactics, wouldn't leave the home. And this is very familiar. I had it with my son, you know, stall tactics, not going to get the chores done. And then when you interrupted the stall tactics, that's why you could get aggression. So in our baseline, it averaged him, you know, as many as almost 2 hours, but an average of 52 minutes to get from the morning routine to out the door. So here's what we noticed was getting in the way. And this is, for you, is I want to find the things that are leading to misbehavior, okay? And misbehavior is I'm not getting out the door, right? And misbehavior is I try to prompt him along quickly, and then aggression spikes. But one of the misbehaviors is I'm not doing my morning routine because I'm on the computer. And then when we try to get him off the computer, he would do another struggle with that. And then he didn't have a clear routine. Sometimes he'd eat breakfast first, sometimes you do this first, sometimes you do that first. Adding a structure and routine is going to be needed for him. And then if you tried to prompt him to do it a different way, no, you're not breakfast now, you still haven't taken your shower, then you could get aggression, and there was no real good reward for getting to school. And so the behavior challenges resulted in, you know, increased time on computer, loss of time at school. So these are some of the quick fixes that we did. Again, this is the sort of thing that you analyze when does the problem occur and what should be occurring, and can I remove the things that make it less likely for the positive behaviors to occur and add things that make it more likely for them to occur. So we eliminate access to the computer in the morning, give him some puzzle, he loves puzzles and coloring, create a visual morning schedule, and then computer time when you get to school, and then if you get there fast enough, a donut. So special treat. So this is what his plan would look like. That's actually like his little morning schedule. So he would do things in this order. He'd take them off, Velcroized, you know how that's done. It says the magic words, all done. His staff were taught to do it the same way in the same order each time. And then when you get to school, there's the computer, and if you beat the clock, you get the donut. So that was the intervention. And what you see here are these principles of can we add structure, add something visual, keep things consistent, and make it all about praise and doing something positive. And that's his results over time. So these are the important principles that we've so far gone over, which is what else should the child be doing? So when we have challenging behavior, we wonder, well, what else, what should be going on? It's not, well, don't be aggressive. It's do a shower in the right order and sequence. What else should be going on? Well, he should listen to adults. Well, he should be putting his backpack on, and he should be doing this in this order. Very specific behaviors. You know, when you break it down that way, if we told you, you know, make this kid not aggressive, I don't know where to begin. Could you help him take a shower? Hey, that I think I could do. Tell this kid he has to listen to adults. Well, how's that going to be? But how do you get him to pick up the backpack, but just before that he brushed his teeth, and just before that he had his breakfast? Well, I could teach those things one at a time. So it makes it a more manageable problem. And that's the second rule, is we worked on a context. We did not say we're going to work on all aggression every time it occurs. We picked a context and worked on them one at a time. We also modified the environment. So back to our meta-analyses, added visual schedule sequence. We eliminated things that provoked the problem. We made things that make positive behaviors more likely to occur. We added rewards. So whenever Ariel was going through his routine, hey, Ariel, you just had your breakfast. That's awesome, man. So lots of praise from the adults in his life. And then we added special treats for arriving at school. Notice what's also going on. If he was a dawdler that day and he arrived at school in 40 minutes, it wasn't his goal, but he got to school, you still get the computer. But the next day, when you're there at 20 minutes, it's like all of a sudden a donut arrives. So I have this thing. My motivation is not about donuts, but I am a social butterfly today. No hassles, no struggles. We're still getting to school. Today, I'm racing to school because I've got a donut waiting for me. So his motivation, whatever's affecting his motivation, is in the background, and he chooses where his motivation is for the day. Technically, they call that a concurrent operant design, but it's used in behavioral psychology to minimize meltdowns and maximize gains slowly over time. And that's what we saw with Ariel. And that's the last thing, is to take your time, be patient, look for changes. We got a whole decade ahead for learning. and gains accumulate slowly over time, and you become more effective as a parent at controlling their behavior with successes up front. You become the stimulus for rewards when there are lots of small successes that build on each other. I used to tell that to my wife as well. By the way, she always says, okay, what are we going to do about that? You're the psychologist. So I would say, well, we're not going to yell at him about this, about looking at a YouTube video when he's 8 years old that he shouldn't have been. We're glad that he told us, and we're glad that we could teach him. We're going to keep the laptop in the kitchen from now on, and that will keep you safe, and then you can follow the rule, and he agrees it. So the laptop's now in there. You can't use it in your room. And then when he's 14, Carolyn, if he's using drugs, he can say, I got another problem. So we want to be thinking out there where he has us as his trusted teacher of how to do well in life. So we take our time, we be patient, and we take these on one at a time. Now here's the hardest one of all, take data. With Ariel, we were timing him going to school because we knew that there'd be good days and bad days, but if we had a downward trend, our goal is still way out here. We knew that we were making progress. So we had little data points going on. What are you hoping to decrease? What are you hoping to see more of? And can you just count these so that you can be rewarded by small gains for your child's progress? Again, my email is below, so you might say, gee, I would like to see that list again. So take a picture of this or reach out to me. So here's our last case example. This is Frank. That's the coolest name he could come up with. It's a little disappointment, I don't know. Come up with a cool name, Teddy, and he says, Frank. I'm like, whatever, okay. So Frank is 16 years old, and he was exposed to substances. He had lots of seizures in infancy. Eventually, he had a meningitis infection, and then his early development was marked by neglect and abuse, and he was removed from the home very early. And now he's in our home, and he's about 16 years old, as I said, and he can engage in aggression and property destruction. His mother couldn't care for him in the home not far down the street. And then he could escalate to suicidal talk and gestures and all. And he ended up going into the psychiatric hospital when he first arrived multiple times in multiple presentations. So what are the behaviors we're concerned about? Well, of course, aggression and ER visits. And what are the contributing factors? He had massive social skills delays. While he loved chatting, he really didn't have strategies to sustain conversation. So he couldn't really get all the attention that he liked from his adults. He was someone that you could ignore. He had very poor executive skills. He couldn't start tasks easily. He would give up too easily. He couldn't bring things to completion. And then the challenging behaviors tended to occur during unstructured times, down times right after school. And when he's behaving that way, people have to rush in and say, Frank, come on, settle down. Frank, let's do this, let's do that. So for a boy who loves to chat and is really good at, really enjoys adult attention, and he can't really get it easily, he can misbehave, and then he must get our staff's attention. So what else should he be doing? What else should Frank be doing? A little 16-year-old guy to get adults to say, good job. What should he be doing at home? Chores. It's the currency. All right, so here's what we're going to do. What else should Frank be doing? He has his points plan. He earns points for completing household chores. He's prompted by caregivers from a posted list, and that posted list is our visual. So sitting in there is a big poster, and it says, everybody helps out. Let's do your part. Points for chores. And then it lists a bunch of chores. So he comes home from school. We say, Frank, which one of these do you want to do? Come on, I will help you. The promise of adult attention, I will do this with you. So they start working with him. Frank then rates himself after the chore. How'd you do? I did it. Give yourself a point on your list. Were you safe? Now we have a dialogue with him, pleasing adults by being safe instead of gaining their attention by misbehaving. Were you safe? I was safe. Then give yourself a point. Did anything break? Did you break anything? No. Get another point. Points are cashed in for prizes. He picks the prizes, small prizes, a little extra time on the iPad, a little piece of candy. You can have a 20-minute game with your favorite staff person, or big prizes, order out for dinner. And so the idea was to encourage Frank to cash in for these every day, a little thing, and then save up for something big. This is an approach I recommend if you're interested in this, the Kazdin method. It's kind of outlined in there. It's just the old token economy or the points plan. I used it with my son, so I can stand by this. I've used this with children in an inpatient psychiatric unit. I've used it with children in other special schools, traumatized children, abused children, children with intellectual disabilities, and children with brain injuries. So it's very effective. The key is that it's not about punishment at all. It's about catching the kid doing a good job around some very, very specific behaviors and then offering everything you can to help them earn their reward. It does not work if the points are up. You see, you should have done your chores. It only works if you did your chore. Here's another point. I tell the staff, your job is a coach that he can max out his bank account and go out to dinner every night. You want to help him beat the system. Your good work will be when he earned 12 points this shift. That's when we know you've done your job. So you get him to do some chores, play with him, convince him, model the chores, ask him to help you out. Now he's doing it on his own. Everything you can, so at the end of it you go, did you do a chore? Give yourself a point. Were you safe? Yes, give yourself another point all the way through it. So the problem with the points plans are when we make them all about you learn because you see you didn't do chores, you don't get points. That's wrong. The way the point plan works is, hey, you did it, give yourself another point. And then when problem behaviors happen, we manage it, we get through it, and then when it's all over, Frank, you still have some time. Do you want to work on your points plan? And we get back on track. That's the way the plan works. And these are Frank's data. So Frank's aggression and property destruction is transport to the DRA, differential reinforcement alternative behavior. That just means points plan. Okay, so the points plan was started right over there. At one point, we started to notice that a lot of these started to happen at night, right around sleep onset. So we came up with a simple plan. The little whiff of trazodone is just like a sniff. That's such a low dose. They could have just licked the pill and throw it away, but a little tiny bit of it. But mostly it was about the staff will pick out a book. They will sit there with you, and they'll read for 5 minutes, and then you try to fall asleep. And if you still need the book, ask again. We'll give it to you. And then staff leave after 15 minutes of being asleep. So just a simple way to guarantee attention at onset of sleep. So that was his plan, a really simple thing. And you can see that it had a long-term impact. This is Frank. Frank captured me across the parking lot. He said, Dr. Joe, I got all these points last night. So what am I supposed to do? Adult attention for getting points. I got to stop my day and go, all right, let's go to your group home and see it. So we walked back into the group home, and he held that up for me. I took his picture. Frank's mom was so proud of him that in consent to give this presentation to others, I said, would it ever be okay to show a picture of Frank? Because he's so proud of it. She goes, I'm proud of him too. Yeah, show his picture, everybody. Tell him all about it. I think he's the greatest thing. He's doing chores around the home. And then the long term is he now spends overnights with his mom and does his points plan at home. So a really nice resolution for a complicated case. So here are some of the principles that we talked about. You can see them taking place in this case. What else should he be doing? A kid should be doing some chores. And how do we sweeten the deal so that he'll start doing it? Work on the context. The context was mostly occurring coming home from school or downtime. Modify the environment. Add a big poster. Teach the staff to prompt him to make a choice. Add rewards, of course, and then be patient with Frank and take some data. So these are some of the strategies that we have talked about. The focus is on a behavior to replace the problem behavior, and we view the problem as teaching him something new, and we really work on avoiding. I mean, you know, I hope you see it. I love Frank, right? And he would go to the ER for weeks, and I'd be like, what are we going to do? But I really like Frank a lot, and we helped him. We make the environment less likely to evoke problem behavior. We add rewards, and we wait things out. We're patient over time. And we call it hard on the problem, easy on the child. And I'm available for questions now. All right. Yes, thank you. Oh, thank you.
So with regard to the points plan,
Yeah.
I know I've heard of several different variations, but they're not like this. And the ones that they've been using with my daughter involve taking away when she.
Yeah.
I don't like this.
No.
More about why it's maybe not the best idea.
Yes, the points are all about earning something special, and you know, just my opinion is that the whole thing works because I did something good and I'm proud of myself and I'm a success. And I'd want to know, well, why are they taking them away? Like, is there another way to address that problem? Like, that would be my encouragement. I don't know, why are they taking them away? And you can go into it or you don't have to, but
It's because she was hitting.
okay.
Like, that's an
Yeah.
unsafe.
So I'd be more backing it up to, under what conditions does hitting occur, and why is that occurring, and how could I modify the environment? Nobody took away Frank's points for property destruction. It still happened, but it was on a downward turn. So I try to avoid the loss of rewards because I'm trying to see more positive behaviors. They do add that sometimes, but I personally never have used it. So I just don't use it, and I would look at, all right, hitting's a new problem to work on. So points are increasing a behavior I want to see more of, and you can also add extra points, say, all right, how about a safe day point? So the rate of hitting, say it's once every 3 days, right? Once every 3 days. Then we would say, for every 2 days safe, then you can get an extra 10 points, okay? So you want to know the rate of hitting, right? And then somewhere after that, somewhere in the middle, so every 2 days. I can do 2 days because it happens on average every 3 days. Then I'm going to get more of those 10 points. And then we're going to have a dialogue with your daughter, and we're going to say, you did an awesome job being safe. That's right, you were frustrated, but you kept your hands to yourself. So-and-so wouldn't let you have the iPad, even though it was your turn. You told me you were frustrated, you kept your hands to yourself. And then I had to ask you to do that extra work, and you said, I don't want to do it. And I said, hey, take some space. And you did it, and nobody got hurt. You were safe. 10 more points. So I make it all about that. Safe day rewards. I'm just spitballing here, but that would be how I might approach it. Yes?
What's your experience on how public schools have been able to help children with brain injuries overcome some of their behavior issues? I think a lot of the emphasis is placed on certain disabilities like autism or other things, and their lack of understanding when it comes to brain injuries. And right now we're struggling trying to tell the school that we don't think they have adequate processes to help our child develop appropriate social and emotional behavior. And they seem to think they do because they have an autism program and they have this program. And I just want to kind of get some of your expertise on what have you seen when it comes to the public schools helping children with brain injuries and or epilepsy.
Yeah, I don't think they know the population like you all do, and they don't integrate the neurology side of it. And so they start from a place of a limited understanding of the behavior. And then they view behavior as behavior. It's just behavior, as if it can all be treated the same. But that's just not true. And we know that because we don't do interventions on children in the same way that we use the same interventions on adults. They're modified for age and cognition, right? So there's the same thing, I think, in brain injury, is a lot of neuropsychology is a driver of the problem. So the use of antecedent strategies, visuals, direct teaching of alternative behaviors, focusing on the positive, those are all things that are very effective in the brain injured population with research, and it looks different than from the autism population. I think also, behavior analysts, and I'm board certified behavior analyst, so I can say this, I think they've narrowly forgotten about population differences. So consequently, they just assume that my principles of behavior are so powerful that it doesn't matter whether it's a child with autism or a child with a brain injury, and that's just not true too. But when I train behavior analysts, and we have them in our school, we start with an understanding of the brain and brain functions, and we teach them to read through the record and determine how brain challenges are a driver of the problem. And I think they create interventions that are much more multifaceted and not one-dimensional. And also, you've heard, it's not about stopping behavior, it's about building good performances, and so that's an alternative too. Yes?
Piggybacking on her, you have a 5-year-old who's 5 years post-surgery, and their issue, we're doing ABA. We've been doing it 6 months. We do 10 hours a week. We tell the plan, we tell it timers, this is the expectation, we do all this. But one of the hardest parts is she is very aggressive towards brother and little sister who's 2, scratching, clawing, hitting, slapping for no reason. Like, we went into the room, we just were about to sit down to eat, and whack and scratch. So how do we respond to brother and sister who are often the victims of this? Sometimes we ignore it. We tell her these are the appropriate behaviors. We're going to use gentle hands. We're going to sit and eat. But when they're crying, and sometimes we'll say, Cambria, and she'll say, I didn't mean to. I'm sorry. She'll just repeat the cycle, and then but she'll still do it. So we get both behaviors. We try to ignore, we try to redirect, but the kids are wondering why we're allowing it to happen.
Yeah, it's a real challenge. I mean, I get it and how hard it is, the stress of the siblings of a child with a disability. There's just a lot known about that, and even in epilepsy, literature too. I think you have to try to prevent as much of the child-on-child as you possibly can. I think that, what I would do, I'm speaking only as a parent, and I would be counseling my child about the differences, and we have to approach this differently. I would probably treat them with some extra affection and all and try to console them through it. I might look for in advance of those times when it's more likely to occur. So I'd probably get good at precursors, like she's edgy right now, so let's keep them separated, or this close proximity is going to be, everybody's too excited right now, I got to separate in advance, and I try to work on antecedents, prevention as much as I could. But I think in the end, it's going to be a mom counseling, the olders about it's hard, and I appreciate what you're doing, and she's a little bit different, so we're trying to help her with this right now. She's certainly not going to get the go to your room because of this behavior in the same way that the older child would, So I don't know. I think that's the best I could come up with. But I'm going to tell you, I'll bet you in this room there are parents who said, okay, here's what I did. And I would want to hear that conversation because honestly, I've learned a lot with people coming up to me and telling me about how they've gotten through some of their behavior problems. I hope it's helpful. Are we about done? Oh, yes.
I'm curious on the rewards. Do you ever back those off? Because you kind of get into a cycle where the kid is now expecting a reward for a behavior, and ideally they just start doing it or they see the value. Or how do you work through like the donut getting to school?
Yeah. But there's nothing wrong with the child expecting a reward if the expectations get a little higher. So the plan can get more complicated. Oh, you do that one already, so we're going to do this. Or you got to do 2 chores because you know how you do chores so easily. Or, well, you can do chores, but you know what? It's going to cost a little more. You got to work a little harder. Everybody has to. There are ways to ease the child into it's a little bit harder to earn the same rewards. So I think that's one way you would do it. When would you eliminate them? Possibly, we're all done with chores, but we're going to start working on this one now. So to apply that plan towards a more future skill could be valuable. You could also make it really hard and make it more like cognitive or emotional self-management skills. You could do some practicing about deep breathing and earn points for practicing it, and then earn points for trying it when somebody has upset you. So I'm just kind of thinking off the top of my head, but the principle would be to move the plan towards the next skill. I don't think that any of us would stop telling our child, we're proud of you, because they already got that. They know I'm proud of them. No, they don't. So I think the externals, the use of points and rewards, might be because it's a great cognitive adaptation for the child's development. It's very tangible. We get into a positive dialogue about things. We can be very specific. My guess is if you make enough progress, it'll just become irrelevant at some point. Maybe not as fast as you'd like, but I'll bet it would be. So make the goals a little more lofty, just a little inch forward. Any other questions? Thank you, everyone.